I'm slowly picking at the cooled omelet with my fork while Pearl talks about his new project, another pointless app that is supposed to change the world of digital content, as if this world needs another app like that. Braxton nods with a look of connoisseurship and occasionally inserts words like monetization and target audience. They feel like I don't know what they're talking about. I've been a tax consultant for 42 years. I know more about money than they'll ever know. Dad, are you listening to me? Pearl looks at me with an irritation he's not even trying to hide anymore. Of course, dear, I reply, looking up. You want to create another photo-sharing app with filters. Pearl rolls her eyes. She's 38, but at times like this she looks like a cranky teenager. It's not just filters, Dad. It's revolutionary artificial intelligence technology that transforms visual content into... She misfires. Never mind. You wouldn't understand anyway. Maybe, I agree, pushing my plate away. At my age, it's hard to keep up with all the new things. Braxton smiles indulgently and winks at Pearl, thinking I won't notice. I'm 77 years old, but I'm not blind or deaf. I'm not yet. How's your investment, Errol? Braxton asks, moving on to a topic that really interests him. It's been a tough year for the market. I'm doing okay, I answer briefly. Beatrice always said that the less people know about your money, the better, especially relatives. We're worried about you, Dad, Pearl says in a tone that is supposed to sound caring. You're all alone here in such a big house, and all these accounts, investments, tax returns. It's so complicated. I did tax returns when you weren't even alive, I remind you, and helped other people do them for the next 4 decades. Yes, but it's different now, she insists. So much new legislation, online platforms, cybersecurity. Braxton could help. You know he works in financial planning. Braxton nods with the importance of a man who sells ready-made financial plans to average families, but thinks of himself as a second Warren Buffett. I know a good financial advisor, Errol. We could set it up. Meet the 3 of us, just to make sure everything's okay. Translated, that means we want to know how much money you have and how soon we can get to it. Thanks, but my old friend Lloyd is helping me with this. He used to work at a bank, I reply. My guest's faces darken slightly. They don't like Lloyd. Or rather, they don't like that I have someone I trust besides them. Lloyd? Snorts Braxton. The old man who lives in the condo by the bay? Errol, with all due respect, he's going to need a guardian soon. He's 79, I say, only 2 years older than me. Exactly. Braxton nods meaningfully, and he and Pearl exchange glances. Sometimes I think they forget I'm sitting right in front of them, or they just don't care. Beatrice would never have let them talk to me like that. But Beatrice is gone. I look at the picture on the wall. It's our last trip together, 3 years ago, a beach in Santa Cruz. Beatrice, in her wide-brimmed straw hat, smiles at the camera. 2 months after that photo, we found out she had cancer. 6 months later, she was gone. Dad? Pearl's voice pulls me out of my memories. You're out there again. I'm sorry, darling. What were you saying? I was saying it might be a good idea to redecorate this house if you're going to stay here, she repeats with a hint of impatience. It's so outdated. I look around the living room. Beatrice chose every detail, the color of the walls pale blue, like the early morning sky, she said, the thick curtains to keep out the sun, the comfortable couch where we watched movies on Fridays. I like things here just the way they are. It seems fine to me, I said. This couch is 100 years old. Pyrrol slaps his hand on the armrest defiantly. And the carpet needs replacing. And anyway, you need something smaller. Why do you need 4 bedrooms? This conversation is repeated every time they come over. The house in Foster City that Beatrice and I bought 30 years ago is now worth several times that amount. Great location, close to the bay, spacious lot. I know that Pearl and Braxton have already calculated how much they can get for it. I like the space, I said. And the memories. You can take the memories with you, Pearl insists. But stairs and big rooms that have to be cleaned only cause problems. You could move closer to us. There are great condos for seniors. For seniors. How polite. They don't call them nursing homes anymore. I'm fine here, I say firmly. And I've hired Eleanor to clean. She comes twice a week. That's a waste of money, Braxton immediately responds. In a condominium, cleaning is included in the monthly fee. I know what this is all about. They want me to sell the house, move into a tiny apartment in an active retirement community, and give them the difference. For safekeeping, of course. For sound investment. I'll think about it, I say to end the conversation. Pearl nods contentedly, taking my words as agreement, though I say it every time, and each time nothing changes. Braxton looks at his watch. We should go, sweetheart. We have a meeting at 3. They always leave before the hour hand makes a full circle. They arrive with a box of store-bought brownies that I don't eat because of my diabetes, which they know all too well, ask questions about my finances, complain about my lifestyle, and leave. Every 2 weeks, just like a schedule. Of course, darling. Pearl stands up and kisses me on the cheek. Bye, Daddy. Don't forget to take your medications. I put them in containers by day of the week. I nod, even though I've been doing just fine with my meds myself for the past 10 years. My daughter thinks I'm a feeble old man who's about to forget his name. Bye, Errol. Braxton shakes my hand. Hard, like he's trying to prove something. Think about what we talked about the house and the counselor. I will, I promise, walking them to the door. When the door closes behind them, I take a deep breath. Silence at last. I return to the chair by the window and look out over the bay. Today the water is steel gray like Beatrice's eyes. She loved to look at the water, said it helped her think. I pull an old leather wallet out of my pocket and take out a small black and white photograph. Beatrice and I, very young on our wedding day. She's in a simple white dress, I'm in a rented suit. We smile, unaware of what lies ahead. We started from scratch. Tiny apartment, used car, working from morning till night. Me in a small accountancy firm, her as an elementary school teacher. Then Pearl was born, our only daughter. Beatrice left her job for a few years to take care of the baby. We saved on everything. We saved every penny. When Pearl started school, Beatrice went back to teaching. A couple of years later, she offered to start her own business, tax advice and financial planning. I was hesitant. The risk was great, but she believed in us. We can do this together, Errol, she said, and we took the risk. The first few years were tough. We worked without a day off. Beatrice did the bookkeeping and communicated with clients. I handled tax returns and investment plans. Gradually, the business took off. By the time Pearl went to college, we could afford to pay for her education without loans. Beatrice was always smarter than me about investments. She had a sixth sense about which stocks would rise. Thanks to her, we were able to buy this house and have a decent old age. Pearl was never interested in our business. After college, she went to Los Angeles, worked for several startups, none of which were successful. Then she came back to the Bay Area, met Braxton, and married him. No kids, just career and ambition. I sigh and tuck the picture back into my wallet. Sometimes I don't recognize my daughter. Where is the smiling girl who collected seashells on the beach and made cards for us for every holiday? Beatrice used to say I was too hard on Pearl. She's just different, Errol. She has her own way. Maybe Beatrice was right. She was always gentler with everyone. Even when Pearl hadn't come to visit us for Christmas 5 years ago because she and Braxton had decided to go to Bali, Beatrice hadn't taken offense. They have their own lives, dear, she said, and sent them presents in the mail, as always. I get up and go into the kitchen. I open the refrigerator and look at the containers of food Pearl brought, prepared meals from the organic store, expensive and tasteless. Beatrice cooked every day. Even when she was sick, she insisted on making menus and giving me instructions. I close the fridge without taking anything. I have no appetite. I sit down at the kitchen table and open the file folder I looked through this morning. Account statements, investment reports, insurance policies. Everything is in order. I'm watching my finances as carefully as I always have. Beatrice's will is in a separate folder. I open it and reread the document even though I know it by heart. It's simple and straightforward. The house, the accounts, the investments, everything goes to me. After I die, Pearl. Nothing complicated. But there's something else. Beatrice has set up a trust fund that Pearl doesn't know about. For our granddaughter or grandson, if they ever come along, Beatrice said. A substantial sum that will grow over the years. If Pearl doesn't have children, the money will go toward educational grants. Beatrice was a teacher to the core. I close the folder and lean back in my chair. The house is quiet. Only the ticking of the old wall clock we bought at an antique store in San Francisco for our 20th anniversary. Beatrice loved its melodious chime. I'm meeting with Lloyd tomorrow. Need to tell him about Pearl and Braxton's visit today, about their persistent questions and suggestions. Lloyd will understand. He's been through something similar with his son. I'm not afraid of Pearl or Braxton. I'm just tired of their fake concern. The way they look at me, like I'm an exhibit in a museum about to be replaced by something more modern. It's times like this that I especially miss Beatrice. She always knew just what to say to Pearl, how to smooth over the sharp edges. "Don't judge her harshly, Errol," she would say. "She's just afraid of losing us." But sometimes I think the only thing Pearl is afraid of is losing the inheritance she's counting on. I get up and go into the bedroom. There's a picture of Beatrice on the bedside table, the last one, taken in the hospital. She already knew she was dying, but she was still smiling. "Live life to the fullest, Errol," she told me the day before she died. "Don't let anyone tell you how to do it." I'm trying, Beatrice. I really am. The Blue Wave Cafe hasn't changed much in the last 20 years. The same wooden tables, creaky floors, and panoramic windows overlooking the bay. I come here every Thursday at 11 o'clock, and Lloyd is always already waiting for me at our table in the corner. Today is no exception. Lloyd waves to me as I walk in. He looks a little tired, but his eyes still shine vividly behind his thin metal-rimmed glasses. "Errol, old boy." He rises to shake my hand. At 79, Lloyd still stands straight like an ex-military man, though he never served. "You're 3 minutes late. That's not like you." "Traffic on the bridge," I reply, taking a seat across from him. "And Pearl called. She was asking about the deed to the house again." Lloyd nods understandingly and takes a sip of coffee. "How was their visit last night?" "The usual," I shrug. "A pulse check and a bank account check." The waitress, a young girl with blue hair and a nose ring, approaches our table. She already knows I'm going to order tea and oatmeal cookies. Lloyd takes a black coffee and a slice of apple pie, even though his doctor has forbidden him sweets because of his diabetes. "Life's too short for diets," he always says. "Tell me more about it," Lloyd asks as the waitress leaves. I sigh and begin to recount yesterday's visit, Braxton's persistent questions about my investments, Pearl's suggestions that I move into a condominium for seniors. "They think I'm a helpless old man who can't take care of himself," I say, not hiding my bitterness, "and they're only interested in my money." "It's a classic story," Lloyd nods. "You remember Howard Pritchett, my buddy from the bank?" I nod. "Howard used to join us for lunch until he moved to Florida 5 years ago. He had a similar situation with his son and daughter-in-law," Lloyd continues. "They literally stalked him, trying to gain access to his accounts. They offered to help him manage his finances. And when he refused, they started spreading rumors among relatives and neighbors that he was losing his mind." "And what happened?" I ask, even though I know the answer. "They ended up getting temporary custody," Lloyd says darkly. "Before I knew it, Howard was in a nursing home, and his son was given power of attorney to manage his entire estate. Within 2 years, he had invested almost all of his father's savings in some dubious schemes. Basically, he just stole the money. I feel a chill run down my spine. That's exactly what I'm afraid of. How's Howard now? He died last year. Lloyd shakes his head. Lonely and broke. I visited him a few times. He said the worst part wasn't the loss of money, but the betrayal of his trusted son. The waitress brings our order and we are silent for a moment. I stir the tea, watching the circles on the surface. Do you think Pearl would do something like that? Lloyd asks cautiously. I don't answer for a long time. It's a difficult question. Pearl is my daughter, my flesh and blood. She was once a little girl who brought me homemade Father's Day cards and fell asleep snuggled against my shoulder. But now, I'm not sure I know her. I don't know, I answer honestly. But Braxton, there's something about him that makes me wary. You need to protect yourself, Errol. Lloyd leans closer. As long as you have full control of your finances, talk to a lawyer. Make sure your will and powers of attorney are in order. And be careful what you say to Pearl and Braxton. Information is power. I'm nodding. Lloyd's right. I should be one step ahead. In fact, I'm going to see a lawyer today. I want to go over some details about Beatrice's inheritance. Good. Lloyd nods approvingly. By the way, you said that your old colleague is coming today. Winton, right? Yeah, he's passing through Foster City. He's staying a couple days before the San Francisco conference. Winton Chalmers? The auditor who helped bust that investment pyramid scheme in the 90s? That's the one, I smile. Winton is an old-school man, and one of the most honest people I know. I'm counting on his advice. Will you tell him about the situation with Pearl and Braxton? I think for a moment. I might. I want to talk to a lawyer first and sort out Beatrice's paperwork. We finish breakfast, discussing the latest news and mutual acquaintances. Lloyd talks about his grandchildren who come to visit him on vacation. There is pride in his voice as he talks about the oldest who has gotten into Stanford. I listen and involuntarily feel a prick of envy. I don't have any grandchildren. Pearl has always said children are not for her. Career first, Dad. I'll get there. But as the years went by, her priorities didn't change. Beatrice dreamed of grandchildren. She even kept some of Pearl's toys for the next generation. Now they're gathering dust in the attic, like Beatrice's hopes. Errol? You're daydreaming again. Lloyd's voice brings me back to reality. Sorry, I was thinking. I glance at my watch. I gotta go. My meeting with the lawyers at 1 o'clock. We pay and walk outside. The day is clear but cool. Typical Foster City weather for this time of year. Keep me posted, Lloyd says as we say goodbye, and be careful. Don't let them take advantage of your kindness. Thanks for the advice, friend. I shake his hand. I'll see you next Thursday. As always, Lloyd nods and heads for his car. I walk to the cab stand. I stopped driving 2 years ago after a minor accident. It was nothing serious, just a scratch on the bumper. But Pearl made such a scene that it was easier to surrender my license than listen to her lecture me about safety and age limits. 20 minutes later, I'm in the office of Ronald Sherman, my lawyer for over 15 years. His office is in a small 2-story building in the business district. No pomp, just practicality and professionalism. The receptionist, Mrs. Chong, greets me with a smile. Mr. Winslow, nice to see you. Mr. Sherman is expecting you. Ronald stands up from his desk as I enter his office. He's about 20 years younger than me, but we've been on a first-name basis for a long time. Errol, have a seat. He points to the chair across from his desk. How are you? I'm fine, Ron, I said, settling into the chair. As fine as can be. We exchange the usual pleasantries before getting down to business. So, you wanted to discuss Beatrice's inheritance. Ronald opens a file folder. What exactly are your concerns? I want to make sure everything's done properly, especially the trust fund. Ronald nods. Everything's legally in order. The trust is registered, the paperwork is in order. The trust will proceed according to Beatrice's instructions, regardless of what happens to the main inheritance. What about contesting the will? I ask bluntly. Is there any way to prevent that? Ronald looks at me carefully. Do you expect anyone to contest Beatrice's will? I don't rush to answer. Ronald is a good lawyer, and I trust him, but accusing your own daughter of self-interest is a serious step. Let's just say I want to be prepared for any eventuality, I finally say. Ronald nods understandingly. Theoretically, a will can be contested on several grounds: incapacity of the testator, undue influence, fraud, coercion. But in Beatrice's case, none of these grounds hold up. She was of sound mind. The will was drafted and signed in accordance with all the rules. There is a medical report on her capacity at the time of the document. I'm relieved, but I'm still worried. What if someone tries to prove that I'm incapacitated and can't administer the inheritance? Ronald frowns. Errol, do you have any specific reasons to worry? I sigh and make up my mind. Pearl and her husband. They keep hinting that I need help with my finances, suggesting I move, sell the house. You know how much real estate is worth in Foster City right now. I understand. Ronald nods. Unfortunately, it's a common situation, but I have good news for you. Beatrice foresaw this scenario. He pulls a document out of a folder and hands it to me. It's an additional page to her will. Beatrice has included a clause for an independent medical examination in case anyone tries to challenge your capacity. The examination is to be conducted by a panel of 3 doctors chosen not by an interested party, but randomly from a list approved by the Medical Association. This makes it much more difficult to try to manipulate the process. I read the document, and a lump comes up in my throat. Beatrice. Even in death, she continues to care for me. She never told me that, I say quietly. She didn't want to bother you, Ronald says softly. But she was a practical person, and she envisioned every possible scenario. I nod, not trusting my voice. Nevertheless, Ronald continues, I would recommend taking extra precautions. For example, regular medical examinations to document your mental state. And it might be worth considering a power of attorney in the event of incapacity, but given to someone you trust completely, not a family member. Lloyd, I say without hesitation. I trust Lloyd. Good choice, Ronald nods. I'll get the paperwork ready. We discuss the details for a while longer. Finally, Ronald closes the folder. There's one more thing, Errol. I need the original copy of Beatrice's will to finalize the trust fund. Do you have it with you? I pat my pockets and realize I left it at home. No, it's in the safe at my house. I forgot to take it. No problem, Ronald smiles. You can bring it back any time next week. It's nothing urgent. No, I shake my head. I'd rather do it today. I'll go home, get the document, and come back. Whatever you say, Ronald agrees. I'll be at the office until 6. We say goodbye, and I go outside. The time is approaching 3 o'clock. Winton arrives at 5:30. If I get home quickly, I can meet him at the train station in time. I catch a cab and give him my address. On the way, the driver offers to turn on the radio, but I refuse. I need to think. Talking to Ronald has calmed me down, but not completely. Beatrice had foreseen many things, but she couldn't have foreseen everything. And she didn't know how persistent Pearl and Braxton could be when it came to money. A cab stops outside a small cafe near my house. I ask the driver to wait and go inside to get a cup of coffee and gather my thoughts. I need to stay focused and cautious. Sitting at a table by the window, I suddenly realize that not only did I forget to bring the will to the lawyer, but I forgot to take it out of the safe before my visit. It's still lying there, in a metal box behind a bookshelf in my office. I pay for my untouched coffee and get back in the cab. I have to hurry. It's almost 4, and it'll take at least 40 minutes to get to the train station, considering the traffic. Let's go, please, I say to the driver. I need to stop at home for 5 minutes and then I need to get to the station. The driver nods and we start driving. I look at my watch. If everything goes according to plan, I'll have time to get the will out of the safe and then meet Winton. Then, tomorrow, I'll take the document to Ronald. I look out the window at the streets of Foster City floating by. This city had been Beatrice's and my home for over 30 years. It's where we built our lives, our businesses. It's where Pearl grew up. And it's where Beatrice spent her last days. A cab pulls up in front of my house. I pay the driver and ask him to wait, literally 10 minutes, I say, just to get my papers and come back. The driver nods and turns off the meter. I walk up to the house and notice someone else's car in the driveway. Braxton's black Audi. What are they doing here? I didn't expect to see Pearl and Braxton until next week. Strange that they came without telling me. Although, come to think of it, they've been showing up more often lately, especially when I'm not home. Checking to see if everything's okay, Dad, Pearl explains, as if the house might fall apart in the 3 hours I'm gone. I quietly climb the porch steps. I have no desire to face them now. I have to get to the train station in time for Winton's arrival. I'll just take the will from the safe and leave. I put the key in the lock and turn it carefully. The door opens noiselessly. I've recently oiled the hinges, though Pearl thinks I can't do that man's work anymore. I step into the hallway and see an unfamiliar woman's shoes, obviously not Pearl's. She never wears such high heels. There must be someone else with them. There are voices coming from the living room. I freeze, listening. Braxton's voice sounds excited. And then this whole house will be ours. Do you have any idea how much it's worth? At least $2 million in the current market. Quiet, it's Pearl's voice, but it's unaccustomedly harsh. What if the neighbors hear? Come on, Braxton laughs. The walls are thick, and the nearest neighbors are 20 meters away. Besides, we're just discussing taking care of your elderly father. What's the big deal? I stand still, afraid to move. What are they talking about? Why do they want my house? Be careful anyway, Pearl says. If Dad finds out that we've already consulted a lawyer about declaring him incompetent, I feel like I've been kicked in the butt. Incapacitated? Me? He won't find out, Braxton says confidently. The old man barely notices. Last time he didn't even realize I was checking his mail. And when I asked about his investments, he just mumbled something about safe investments and changed the subject. Are you sure this is going to work? Pearl's voice sounds concerned. The lawyer said it would be difficult without a medical report. That's why I invited Diane, Braxton replies. I'd like you to meet her, by the way. Diane Phelps, the best geriatrician in our clinic. Third voice, female, soft and professional. Nice to meet you, Pearl. Braxton's told me a lot about you and your father. Diane has agreed to help us, Braxton continues. She will examine your father and prepare the necessary report. I must emphasize, Diane interjects, that I can only make an objective assessment of Mr. Winslow's condition. If he is indeed suffering from cognitive decline or dementia, I will document it. But I can't. Of course, Braxton interrupts her. We understand. Purely professional opinion. But between you and me, Errol's really losing it. Forgets things. Gets confused about dates. You said it yourself, Pearl. Pause. Then Pearl's voice. Yes, he's been absent-minded lately. Sometimes he repeats the same stories. And that accident 2 years ago. You see, Braxton says triumphantly. Classic signs. Diane, when can you take a look at him? I need him to agree to an examination, Diane replies. I can't just... It's not a problem, Braxton interrupts again. We'll say it's a routine checkup. A routine checkup. He won't even realize what's going on. I can feel the blood pounding in my temples. They plan to trick me, slip me their doctor, get a fake report that I'm incapacitated, to take over my house, my money, everything Beatrice and I have built up over a lifetime. What about Beatrice's will? Pearl asks. You said we could contest it. Exactly, Braxton replies. Once we get custody of your father, we can act on his behalf, which means we can contest the will. Say Beatrice was under the influence of medication when she signed it, or that Errol manipulated her. But that's not true. Pearl's voice sounds uncertain. Mom was completely lucid until the very end. Who can prove it? Braxton objects. She was terminally ill on heavy painkillers. Any court would take that into account, especially if we get the right judge. I have connections. I can't believe what I'm hearing. My brother-in-law plans to falsify not only my condition, but the circumstances of Beatrice's will. And Pearl, my own daughter, is in on it. And the trust fund? Asks Pearl. Mom set up some kind of trust fund. I remember her mentioning it. It's hard to say without details, Braxton replies. But if we get control of Errol's finances, we can find out the details, and then we can figure out what to do about it. I don't know, Braxton, Pearl said, doubt in her voice. It just doesn't seem wrong. Wrong? Braxton laughs. What's wrong with taking care of your father? He's no longer capable of managing a condition like this. You've seen how he lives, spending money on a gardener and a housekeeper when he could live in a good nursing home for half that. We'll just use his resources wisely. And buy a house in Napa, Pearl adds with sudden greed in her voice. And a house in Napa, Braxton agrees. And maybe a small yacht. And invest in my new project, which will make us millions in a couple years. And if Dad resists? Pearl asks. He's stubborn. He's an old man, Braxton replies dismissively. He's 77. How long does he have left? 5 years? Maybe less. He's not old enough to fight anymore, especially if we find proof that he's incapacitated. I hear the rustle of papers, the sound of liquid being poured. So here's the plan, Braxton continues. Diane will do the examination next Tuesday. I've already made an appointment for him. We'll say it's a routine checkup, nothing special. Diane will note signs of cognitive impairment. With that report, we go to court and file a petition for guardianship. I mean, you, Pearl, as your only daughter and next of kin. And then? Pearl asks. And then we sell this house, move your father to Sunny Hills, that nursing home near Redwood City. It's a pretty nice place, and we start managing his finances, along with contesting Beatrice's will to remove any inheritance restrictions. Sounds complicated, says Pearl, but doable, Braxton assures him. I've thought of everything. I have a friend at the courthouse who can help with the paperwork, and a lawyer who specializes in this kind of thing. It'll go smoothly, I promise. I hear the sound of glasses clinking. To our new life, Braxton says. No financial problems and a house in Napa. To a new life, Pearl echoes. I stand, paralyzed with shock and anger. My son-in-law and my daughter plan to steal my life, my property, my dignity. They speak of me as furniture to be rearranged, like a nuisance that needs to be removed. I feel like storming into the living room and screaming at them. Demand an explanation. Kick them out of my house. But I realize that would be a mistake. I know their true intentions now, and they don't know that I know. That's my only advantage. I retreat quietly to the door, about to leave the house unnoticed, but I remember the will. It's in the safe in my office. I need to get it out without attracting attention. Luckily, my office is in another wing of the house, away from the living room. I can sneak in through the back staircase. Carefully, trying not to make a sound, I move through the hallway toward the stairs. Every floorboard seems to creak under my feet. I've never noticed before how noisy this old house can be. But the voices from the living room continue, drowning out any sounds I might make. I make my way up the stairs, staying closer to the wall where the boards are less prone to creaking. On the second floor, I stop and listen. The voices from downstairs still sound, but less distinct. They have not noticed my presence. My office is a small room overlooking the bay. Beatrice set it up for me when we first bought the house. You need your own space, Errol, she said then. It's where I worked on clients' tax returns, researched investment opportunities, and read financial journals. And now it's where Beatrice and I keep our most important documents. I open the office door and slip inside. The safe is hidden behind a fake bookshelf, an old-fashioned solution, but effective. I push back the shelf and type in the combination: Beatrice's birthday, our wedding day, and Pearl's birthday. The irony doesn't escape me. The safe opens with a quiet click. Inside are neatly stacked folders of papers, Beatrice's jewelry that she wanted to give to Pearl. When she has a daughter of her own, she used to say, a few bonds and a will in a blue folder with gold embossing. I pull out the folder and quickly check the contents. Everything is there. The original will, a copy, additional trust fund orders. I close the safe and put the bookshelf back where it belongs. Now I need to get out of the house undetected. I listen. The voices are still coming from the living room. They seem to have moved on to discussing the details of the design of the future house in Napa. Braxton says something about a wine cellar and Pearl insists on a swimming pool. I quietly leave the office and head for the back staircase. It leads directly to the back door through the kitchen. We rarely use that door, but it's always open from the inside. I walk down the stairs, making sure to step only on the edges of the steps where they creak less. In the kitchen, I stop and listen again. The voices are still in the living room, but they're louder now. It sounds like Braxton has opened another bottle of wine. To our financial independence, his voice sounds smug. And here's to a speedy resolution to the daddy problem. I shudder at the way he says the word daddy, with mockery and contempt. To him, I'm just an obstacle to wealth, an obstacle to be removed. And Pearl, my daughter, my flesh and blood? She laughs with him, laughing at his plans to put me in a nursing home and take over everything Beatrice and I have created through decades of hard work. I quietly open the back door and slip out into the yard. I walk around the perimeter of the house, staying close to the hedge so I can't be seen from the living room windows. I reach the driveway where a cab is waiting. Sorry for the delay, I say to the driver, climbing into the back seat. To the train station, please, and hurry up. The car starts up. I look back at the house. My house, the house that Pearl and Braxton already think is theirs. The lights are on in the living room windows where my family is plotting how to take everything away from me. I clutch the will folder tighter. It's not just legal documents, but proof of Beatrice's love and concern even in death. She's trying to protect me. I can't let her down. I can't let Pearl and Braxton ruin what we've built. Lloyd's words about his friend Howard, who lost everything because of his own son's greed, flash through my mind. I'm not going to let that happen to me. I won't let them turn me into a helpless old man trapped in Sunny Hills while they enjoy my money. I need a plan. And I need help. Luckily, Winton is on his way, and Lloyd is always on my side. And Ronald, my lawyer. I have allies. And I have the advantage of knowing their plans, and they don't know that I know. The cab rushes down the highway toward the train station. I glance at my watch. I still have time before Winton's train arrives. Time to get my head together and take action. Because it's not just my fortune or my home that's at stake right now. My freedom, my dignity, the last years of my life are at stake. I glance nervously at my watch as I stand on the train station platform. The train from Sacramento is due in 5 minutes. People around me are rushing, jostling, talking on their phones. It's an ordinary evening at the train station. But for me, there is nothing ordinary about this day. The conversation I overheard in my own home continues to echo in my ears. Braxton's voice, smug and confident. The voice of Pearl, my daughter, agreeing to put me in a nursing home. How long does he have left? 5 years? Maybe less. Every word is like a stabbing blow. A speakerphone announcement interrupts my thoughts. The train from Sacramento is arriving on platform 3. I take a deep breath, trying to calm myself. I need a clear head. Winton shouldn't see me in this state, not right away. The train slowly pulls up to the platform. The doors open and passengers begin to get off. I peer through the crowd, looking for a familiar figure. There he is, a tall, thin man with a neat gray beard and a leather briefcase in his hand. Wynton Chalmers, my colleague and friend for over 35 years. Errol. He waves at me and quickens his step. You haven't changed. That's not true, of course. We've both changed. The years have taken their toll, but there are some things that remain the same. Our friendship, for example. Wynton. I shake his hand. It's good to see you. Likewise, old sport. How's Beatrice? He falters when he sees the look on my face. I'm sorry, I forgot. It's been 2 years, I say quietly. Don't apologize. I still sometimes forget she's gone when I wake up in the morning. Wynton nods understandingly. He lost his wife the year before Beatrice. Cancer. That word seems to haunt our generation. Let's take a cab, I suggest. I have a lot of news. We leave the train station. The evening is warm, but a cool breeze blows in off the bay. Typical Foster City weather for this time of year. In the cab, Wynton talks about his trip, about the conference in San Francisco to which he has been invited as an expert. I listen half-heartedly, nodding in the right places. My thoughts revolve around one thing: how to tell him what happened. Errol, Wynton interrupts. Something's happened. I can see it in your face. I look at him. Wynton was always perceptive. It made him a great auditor and a loyal friend. Yes, I admit, it happened. But let's not do it here. We need to stop by my lawyer's office. I'll explain everything there. Wynton nods silently. He's not the type to ask unnecessary questions. I give the driver the address of Ronald Sherman's office. I hope he's still there. It's almost 6 o'clock at night. Fortunately, there are still lights on in the office windows when we arrive. Mrs. Chang is about to leave, but when she sees me, she smiles. Mr. Winslow, you're back. Mr. Sherman is still here. He's sorting through some paperwork before the weekend. Thank you, Mrs. Chang, I say with relief. I need to talk to him right away. She nods and lets us into the hallway leading to Ronald's office. Errol? Ronald looks at us in surprise as we enter. I didn't expect to see you again today. Wynton Chalmers, I introduce my companion. My old friend and colleague, Ronald Sherman, my lawyer. The men shake hands. Ronald, I have a problem, I say without preamble. A serious problem. I begin to recount what I overheard in my house. Ronald's face grows darker with each word. Wynton listens with a stony expression, but I can see the jowls in his cheekbones tensing. They plan to declare me incompetent, I finish my story. Put me in a nursing home and take everything I own. Everything Beatrice and I have built up over a lifetime. There is silence in the study. Ronald leans back in his chair, tapping his fingers thoughtfully on the desk. This is serious, he says at last. Very serious. If they were acting legally, filing a petition in court with evidence of your incapacity, that would be one thing. But hiring an out-of-pocket doctor, planning to manipulate the facts, that's bordering on a felony. What do we do? I'm asking. I can't just sit back and wait for them to implement their plan. We need to act fast, Wynton enters, and on several fronts at the same time. Ronald nods. Wynton's right. First, we need to protect your assets. Second, we need to gather evidence of your capacity. Third, we need to develop a strategy to counter their plans. Let's start with assets, Wynton says in a businesslike tone. What do you have, Errol? Cash, investments, real estate? I pull out a small notebook from my inside jacket pocket. Beatrice always insisted that we keep an accurate record of our finances. I continued this practice after her death. A house in Foster City, appraised at $2,100,000. An investment portfolio of about $1,700,000, mostly blue chip and index funds. About $300,000 in savings accounts. Retirement savings of $450,000. Winton whistles. Not bad, old boy. You and Beatrice have done well. And it's all Pearl and Braxton want to get their hands on, I say bitterly. Everything we've worked for all our lives. We won't let them, Ronald says firmly. I've got an idea. We'll set up an irrevocable trust. An irrevocable trust? I ask again. Yes, Ronald nods. It's a trust whose terms cannot be changed or revoked without the consent of the beneficiaries. You can transfer a significant portion of your assets into such a trust. Designate yourself as a beneficiary during your lifetime, and after you die, whoever you want to be your beneficiary, like the charities Beatrice supported. What about Pearl? I ask. Despite her betrayal, she's still my daughter. You can leave her something, Ronald says, but not everything, and not under her direct control. I'd recommend transferring most of the liquid assets, Winton adds. Save enough to live comfortably, but protect the principal. I nod. A plan begins to form in my head. What about the house? I ask. That's what they're targeting the most. Ronald hesitates a moment. The house is more complicated. We could put it in a trust, but that might raise suspicion. Or, he falls silent, considering something. Or, I'm pushing. We could set up a life tenure, Ronald says. You stay in the house for the rest of your life, and when you die, it goes to the same charity, for example. Or you could make a conditional will. The house goes to Pearl, but only if certain conditions are met. What conditions? I ask. Like you weren't declared incompetent before you died, or that you weren't placed in a nursing home against your will, Ronald suggests. I smile for the first time all day. That's fair enough. It's exactly what Beatrice would have done. Okay, I say. Let's do that. Create an irrevocable trust for most of my assets. We'll make a conditional will for the house, and I want to put some of the money in a secret account just in case. That makes sense, Winton nods. I'd recommend opening an account at a different bank than the one you usually use, and maybe not even in your name. Whose name? I ask. You could put it in a trust company, Ronald suggests. Or, he looks at Winton. I can help, Winton says. I have trusted people at several banks. We can arrange everything safely and confidentially. I nod gratefully. Friends to rely on are a real treasure at my age. Now for proof of your capacity, Ronald continues. I suggest you undergo an independent medical examination. I have the contacts of several respected geriatricians and neurologists. They'll evaluate your cognitive state and give you an opinion. That will be our bargaining chip if Pearl and Braxton try to carry out their plan. I agree, I say. The sooner the better. I'll organize it next week, Ronald promises. In the meantime, I think you should behave as usual. Don't show that you know anything about their plans. Pretend to be an unsuspecting old man. I chuckle unhappily. It's not going to be easy, especially when they bring in their doctor. You can refuse to be examined, Winton says. That's your right. I wonder. Refusal might alert them, make them change their plan. And now that I know what they're up to, it's to my advantage to have them act predictably. No, I'd rather take it, I decide. But I'll be prepared, and maybe I'll record the conversation. That's a great idea, Ronald says approvingly. In fact, I'd encourage you to start recording all conversations with Pearl and Braxton. California requires consent from all parties to record a conversation, but these recordings can still be useful to your defense. I have a small digital voice recorder, Winton says. High-quality recording, easy to use. I can give it to you. Thank you, I nod. That'll come in handy. Ronald opens his laptop and starts typing. I'll prepare all the necessary documents to set up the trust and change the will. We can execute them as early as tomorrow. The sooner we act, the better. What about selling the stock and transferring the money? I ask. Won't that raise suspicions? It will. Winton nods. But that's the point. We want them to know you're doing something with your assets. It'll make them nervous, maybe even make a mistake. Exactly, Ronald agrees. But we have to operate within the law. No dubious schemes. Everything has to be transparent and legal so they can't use it against you. I can feel the tension that's been gripping me all day starting to let go. I have a plan. I have allies. I have a chance to protect what is rightfully mine. There's something else, I say, remembering. Beatrice's will. They plan to contest it, claiming that she was under the influence of medication or that I manipulated her. Ronald shakes his head. It's going to be hard to prove. We have a medical report of her capacity at the time she signed the will. Also, the will was made months before her death, when she was not yet on strong painkillers. And we have a videotape of the signing, I add. Beatrice insisted on it. She said she wanted it to be crystal clear. That's great, Ronald is clearly pleased. The videotape is strong evidence. Where is it now? In a safety deposit box, I answer, along with other important documents. Good, Ronald nods. Keep it there. It's the safest place. We discuss the details for about another hour. Ronald draws up a list of necessary actions. Vinton suggests various financial strategies. I listen, ask questions, make decisions. For the first time in a long time, I don't feel like a helpless old man, but a man in control. By the time we finish, it's almost 9 o'clock in the evening. Ronald hails a cab for Winton and me. 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, he says goodbye. I'll be waiting for you here with the documents ready. We thank him and go outside. The night is cool, starry. I take a deep breath of fresh air. How are you feeling? Winton asks as we get into the cab. Better, I answer honestly. Still shocked and disappointed, but at least now I have a plan. That's good, Winton nods. It's important to keep a clear head. Don't let your emotions cloud your judgment. I look at my old friend with gratitude. I'm lucky to have him around right now. Thank you, Winton, for everything. You're welcome, old friend, he pats me on the shoulder. That's what friends are for. A cab takes us to my house. Luckily, Braxton's car isn't in the driveway. They've left, probably to continue celebrating their future financial independence somewhere else. The house greets us with silence and darkness. I turn on the hallway light. Everything looks the same as usual, but now I look at my house with different eyes. It's no longer just a place where I live. It's an asset my own daughter plans to take from me. Make yourself comfortable, I say to Winton, pointing to the guest bedroom. Bathroom's over there. Towels are in the closet. Thank you, he nods. But first, why don't we get a drink? I think we could both use one after a day like this. I agree. We go into the kitchen where I pull out the bottle of good scotch I've been saving for special occasions. If today isn't a special day, I don't know which one to consider as such then. We sit at the kitchen table, sipping whiskey and discussing the details of tomorrow's activities. Winton suggests we start by selling the most liquid shares. It's quick and will leave a trail that Pearl and Braxton are sure to notice. They're probably watching your accounts, he says. Braxton, as a financial advisor, may have access to such information. I nod. That doesn't surprise me. Lately, Braxton has been all too aware of the state of my investments. Has something changed in your relationship with Pearl? Winton asks cautiously. When I saw you last, a few years ago, you seemed closer. I wonder, when did this estrangement begin? After Beatrice died or before? I don't know, I answer honestly. Maybe we were never really close. Beatrice was the link between us. She knew how to smooth things over, how to compromise. Without her, everything just fell apart. Winton nods understandingly. And Braxton doesn't help the situation, I suppose. Braxton, I shake my head. He's always been ambitious, always wanted more than he had. But I never thought he'd go to this. Money changes people, Winton says thoughtfully. Or rather, it shows their true colors. We finish our whiskeys and retire to our bedrooms. I lie awake for a long time staring at the ceiling. My thoughts revolve around the events of today, the plans for tomorrow, the uncertain future. I think of Beatrice. What would she say now? How would she act? She's always been gentler with everyone, especially Pearl. "Don't judge her harshly, Errol," she used to say. "She's just afraid of losing us." But it's not fear that's driving Pearl now. It's greed. Pure, unconcealed greed. I turn on my side and look at the picture of Beatrice on my bedside table. She's smiling her gentle smile, and in her eyes is all the wisdom in the world. "I won't let you down, Beatrice," I mentally promise. "I won't let them ruin what we've built together. I won't let them dishonor your memory." With that thought, I finally fall asleep, preparing myself for the drastic actions of tomorrow. The last 3 days have been filled with action. Winton, Ronald, and I have worked tirelessly, doing paperwork, transferring funds, and setting up an irrevocable trust. I underwent a thorough medical examination by 3 independent specialists who unanimously confirmed my full capacity. All of these reports were notarized and placed in Ronald's safe deposit box. This morning I received notification of the latest transaction, the sale of a substantial stake and the transfer of funds to a trust. Now all I had to do was wait for Pearl and Braxton's reaction. I knew it would be immediate. Braxton must have been monitoring my financial transactions. Winton had left yesterday for his conference in San Francisco, but promised to return in 2 days. I was grateful for his support and help. Thanks to him and Ronald, I felt secure. At least financially. Emotionally was another matter. Betraying my own daughter had left a wound that I knew would never fully heal. I still couldn't believe that Pearl, my only daughter, could have plotted such a thing. Did money mean more to her than our relationship? Than my freedom and dignity? The doorbell rang at exactly 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I knew who it was before I even opened the door. Braxton stood on the threshold, his face contorted with anger, though he tried to hide it behind a strained smile. Pearl stood behind him, pale and tense. "Errol," Braxton tried to speak casually, but I could hear the tension in his voice. "Can we come in? We need to talk." I stepped aside silently, letting them into the house. They made their way into the living room but didn't sit down. Braxton was tapping his fingers nervously on the arm of his chair, and Pearl was fiddling with the strap of her designer purse. "Tea?" I offered, savoring their discomfort. "Or coffee, perhaps." "That's enough, Dad," Pearl said sharply. "We know what you did." I feigned incomprehension. "What are you talking about, dear?" "You sold stock," Braxton blurted out, his composure finally crumbling. "Almost $1 million worth of stock. And where did the money go? Into some trust. What the hell is going on?" I slowly lowered myself into my favorite chair, the same one Beatrice used to sit in when she read before bed. "Oh, that," I said calmly. "Yes, I've decided to restructure my assets. Long-term planning, you see." "Long-term planning?" Braxton was almost shouting. "Without consulting us? Without discussion?" "Why should I discuss it with you?" I asked, looking him straight in the eye. "It's my money, my assets. The result of decades of labor by me and Beatrice." Pearl stepped forward. "Papa, we're worried about you. Big financial decisions like this. It's not like you. You've never made such sudden moves before." I almost admired her acting skills. If I hadn't heard their conversation with my own ears, I might have believed her genuine concern. "People change, Pearl," I replied. "I have decided that it is time to secure my fortune according to my wishes." "And what are your wishes?" Braxton asked, trying to remain calm, but his eyes showed fury. "To whom will the money go? Who is the beneficiary of this mysterious trust?" I smiled. "Mostly the charities your mother supported, Pearl. Educational programs, cancer research, animal shelters. Beatrice always said we should give back to the community." Pearl's face grew even paler. "Charities? You gave $1 million to charity? Not exactly, I corrected. I've set up a trust to manage those funds. I remain the beneficiary during my lifetime, and after I die, the funds will be distributed according to my instructions. What about me? Pearl's voice trembled. I am your daughter, your family. I looked at her with a long look. Yes, you are my daughter, and you will get your share, but not in the way you might have expected. Braxton started pacing the room. This is crazy, Errol. Absolute madness. You're in no condition to make these decisions. You clearly don't know what you're doing. Do I? I raised an eyebrow. I think I know exactly what I'm doing. And why? Something in my tone made them both wary. They exchanged quick glances. What do you mean? Pearl asked cautiously. I stood up and walked over to the bookshelf, where the small digital recorder Winton had given me stood among the books. I picked it up. You know, as I get older, my memory really starts to fail, I said thoughtfully. So I started writing down important things, conversations, meetings, plans, a very useful habit, I must say. Braxton froze in place. What are you saying? Instead of answering, I pressed a button on the recorder. Braxton's voice filled the room. And then, this whole house will be ours. Do you have any idea how much it's worth? At least $2 million in the current market. I stopped the tape and looked at their stunned faces. I came home that day, I said quietly, for Beatrice's will, and I heard you two talking. I heard you planning to declare me incompetent, put me in a nursing home, take my house, my money, everything I own. Pearl turned white as a sheet. Dad, you don't understand. I understand perfectly well, I interrupted her. I heard every word. How you found your doctor to falsely diagnose her. How you planned to manipulate the facts to contest Beatrice's will. How Braxton said I had 5 years to live, maybe less. Braxton stepped forward, his face contorted with rage. You had no right to record us. It's illegal. Maybe, I agreed. The tape probably won't be admissible in court, but my lawyer already has a copy, with instructions to release it if any legal action is taken against me. Imagine what would happen if your friends, co-workers, clients heard you planning to put an old man in a nursing home to get his money. What kind of a blow to your reputation would that be, Braxton? On your career as a financial advisor? Braxton looked like he'd been kicked in the butt. He opened and closed his mouth like a beached fish. Pearl sank down on the couch, covering her face with her hands. My God, she whispered, what we have done. You betrayed me, I said simply. My love, my trust, your mother's memory, everything Beatrice and I had worked our whole lives for. It was Braxton's idea, Pearl said suddenly, raising her tear-filled eyes to me. I never meant to. Shut up, Pearl, Braxton shouted. Don't you dare take it out on me. But it's true, she screamed. You said it was the only way to get the money we needed for your stupid startup. You said Dad was going to die soon anyway, so who cares? They yelled at each other, oblivious to my presence. Their accusations, excuses, and curses filled the room that once held the calm voice of Beatrice reading poetry or discussing weekend plans. I looked at them and was overwhelmed not by rage, but by a deep, all-consuming sadness. What happened to that smiling little girl who used to bring me homemade Father's Day cards? When did she turn into this greedy, spiteful woman who would betray her own father for money? Enough, I said finally. My voice was quiet, but they were silent instantly. I want you to leave. Now. Braxton drew in his breath, preparing to explode again, but Pearl put her hand on his shoulder. Let's go, she said tiredly. There's nothing more to do here. They headed for the exit. At the door, Pearl turned around. Papa, Don't, Pearl. I shook my head. Just go. The door closed behind them and the house was silent. I went back into the living room and sank into a chair. A feeling of devastation came over me in a wave. I had expected the confrontation to bring relief, but instead I felt only fatigue and deep sadness. I didn't know how long I'd been sitting like that, staring into the void when the phone rang. It was Lloyd. "Errol, how are you?" Winton called me, told me about the situation. I was worried. My old friend's voice brought me back to reality. "They were here," I said. "Pearl and Braxton. They just left." "And how did it go?" "As expected. First the anger, then the accusations. Then they started fighting with each other." "Typical," Lloyd chuckled. "When rats are cornered, they start biting each other." "Pearl was trying to blame it on Braxton," I said. "Maybe that's partly true. He's always been greedy and ambitious. But she let him convince herself. Agreed to the plan. That's her choice." "Yes," Lloyd agreed. "Unfortunately, we can't choose our children. But we can choose how we react to their actions." "I chose to protect myself," I said. "My independence, my dignity. Something that Beatrice and I had spent a lifetime building." "And you did the right thing," Lloyd said confidently. "Beatrice would be proud of you." After talking to Lloyd, I felt better. He invited me to dinner at his house the following Friday. His grandchildren would be visiting, and he wanted me to meet them. I agreed. Maybe that's what I needed right now. New connections, new relationships not poisoned by greed and betrayal. In the evening, Winton called from San Francisco. He too wanted to know how the meeting with Pearl and Braxton had gone. "They left with their tails between their legs," I said. "But I don't think they gave up completely. Especially Braxton. He's not the type to give up millions easily." "That's why we set up the trust," Winton reminded me. "Now your assets are protected. They can try to contest it, but the chances are minimal, especially given the medical reports and the recording of their conversation." "I know," I sighed. "But it's still frustrating to live with the idea that your own daughter could try to have you declared incompetent at any time." "I understand," Winton said sympathetically. "But you're not alone, Errol. You have me, Lloyd, Ronald. We won't let them hurt you." After talking to Winton, I went out to the backyard and sat on a bench that overlooked the bay. The sun was setting, coloring the sky and water in shades of orange and purple. Beatrice loved this time of day. "The golden hour," she called it. I thought about how my life had changed over the past week. I'd lost my daughter, or rather, I'd realized I'd lost her a long time ago. I just didn't want to admit it. But I've also gained a new resolve and clarity. I will no longer live in illusions. I will not tolerate disrespect and neglect for the sake of maintaining the semblance of a family relationship. I will live life on my own terms, surrounded by people who truly care about me, not my money. The next morning, I called Ronald and asked him to change my will. I decided to exclude Pearl from being the main heir. She would still receive a small amount. I couldn't completely disown my only daughter, no matter how much pain she had caused me. But the bulk of my fortune would now go to a trust that would support educational programs for underprivileged children. Beatrice has always believed in the power of education. "Knowledge is the only wealth that cannot be stolen," she used to say. 2 days after the confrontation with Pearl and Braxton, I received a letter from Pearl. A short one, written in a trembling hand. She apologized, said she had succumbed to Braxton's influence, that she had never really meant to hurt me. I read it a few times, trying to feel something: anger, regret, forgiveness. But there was only emptiness inside. Too many bridges had been burned. Too much trust had been shattered. I didn't answer the letter. Maybe someday I would find the strength to talk to my daughter again. But not now. Right now, I need time for myself. Time to heal my wounds, to find a new balance, to build a new life. A week later, Lloyd invited me to a barbecue at his condominium by the bay. His grandchildren were there. 2 teenagers, smart and polite, a few neighbors, and Winton, who had decided to stay in San Francisco for a while longer. The evening was warm, the food delicious, the conversations interesting. I didn't talk about Pearl or Braxton. There was no need to. These people accepted me for who I was, not because of my money or possessions, but simply because they enjoyed my company. Returning home that evening, I felt a strange calmness. Yes, I had lost my daughter. Yes, I had been betrayed by those closest to me. But I had also found a new freedom. Freedom to live without pretense, without having to endure disrespect for the sake of maintaining a semblance of family harmony. Freedom to be myself, surrounded by people who truly appreciate me. Live life to the fullest, Errol, Beatrice told me before she died. Don't let anyone tell you how to do it. I didn't let her down. I protected what we had built together, and now I will live my life the way I think is right, with dignity and on my own terms. I still have time. Maybe 5 years, like Braxton said, maybe more. But whatever happens, those years will be mine and mine alone.